Pope Francis has been leading a Mass at St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican for Easter Sunday. The 86-year-old expressed his deep concern about the escalating tensions between Israelis and Palestinians and called on the international community to end the war in Ukraine.
In a stunning turn of events, the Vatican has surprised the world with an announcement concerning the beloved Pope Francis, one of the most transformative and beloved figures in modern history, has made a decision that could redefine the future of the Catholic Church. What led to this unusual move, and how will it carry through the lives of millions of believers worldwide? This revelation isn't just ordinary news, it's history in the making. Stay with us as we unravel the intrigue, the implications, and the extraordinary legacy of a leader who continues to surprise us all. A transformative papacy. From the moment he stepped out onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, Pope Francis captured the hearts of the faithful with his humble demeanor and radiant smile. His vision for the Catholic Church was one of renewal, a return to the core values of compassion, mercy, and love. He sought to bring the Church closer to the people, to make it a welcoming home for all, regardless of their background or circumstances. With each passing day, it became clear that this was a pope unlike any other, a leader determined to steer the Church towards a brighter, more inclusive future. Pope Francis wasted no time in implementing a series of bold reforms and initiatives that would reshape the Catholic Church. He streamlined the Vatican bureaucracy, cracking down on corruption and increasing transparency. He also appointed a diverse group of cardinals from around the world, signaling his commitment to a more global and representative church. But perhaps his most significant reform was his emphasis on mercy and forgiveness. He declared an extraordinary Jubilee year of mercy, encouraging Catholics to seek forgiveness and to extend compassion to others. This message resonated deeply with the faithful, drawing many back to the Church who had felt alienated or marginalized. At the heart of Pope Francis's papacy was a deep commitment to compassion, inclusion, and social justice. He sought to build a church that was truly welcoming to all, especially those on the margins of society. He reached out to the poor, the sick, and the imprisoned, reminding the world that the measure of a society is how it treats its most vulnerable members. He also spoke out strongly against the excesses of capitalism, calling for a more just and equitable economic system that prioritized the needs of the many over the desires of the few. His words and actions inspired a new generation of Catholics to take up the cause of social justice, to be the hands and feet of Christ in a world that so desperately needed healing. Despite his many successes, Pope Francis faced significant challenges during his tenure. One of the most pressing was the clergy's sexual abuse crisis that had rocked the Church for decades. Francis took important steps to address this issue, holding bishops accountable and meeting with survivors to offer his apologies and support. However, many felt that he could have done more, and the crisis continued to cast a shadow over his papacy. He also faced resistance from conservative factions within the Church who opposed his reforms and accused him of diluting Church doctrine. But through it all, Francis remained steadfast in his commitment to building a more compassionate and inclusive Church, even in the face of opposition. Pope Francis's impact on the global Catholic community cannot be overstated. His message of mercy, compassion, and inclusion resonated with Catholics around the world, inspiring a renewed sense of faith and purpose. In Latin America, where he was born, he was a particularly beloved figure, seen as a champion of the poor and a voice for social justice. But his influence extended far beyond his home region. In Africa, Asia, and beyond, Catholics looked to Francis as a beacon of hope and a model of servant leadership. His visits to countries like the United States, Myanmar, and Iraq brought joy and healing to communities that had long been overlooked or forgotten. As he prepares to step down from his role as Pope, there is no doubt that his legacy will endure, inspiring generations of Catholics to follow in his footsteps and build a church that truly reflects the love and compassion of Christ. Pope Francis's transformative papacy was marked by his unwavering commitment to social justice. His vision for a more compassionate and inclusive church found its clearest expression in his tireless advocacy for the poor, the marginalized, and the oppressed. Championing social justice, Pope Francis emerged as a powerful voice for the voiceless, Speaking out boldly against the scourge of poverty and inequality, he challenged the excesses of capitalism, arguing that an economy that prioritizes profit over people is fundamentally unjust. In his groundbreaking encyclical, Laudato Si', he linked the cry of the earth with the cry of the poor, urging the world to pursue a more sustainable and equitable model of development. His words and actions inspired a global movement of Catholics and non-Catholics alike, united in their commitment to building a more just and compassionate world. Pope Francis's advocacy for social justice extended beyond the realm of economics. He became a fierce defender of refugees and migrants, calling on nations to welcome those fleeing war, persecution, and poverty. He linked the plight of migrants with the broader struggle for environmental justice, arguing that the same forces that drive people from their homes also degrade the planet we share. His message of solidarity and compassion inspired countless grassroots movements and activists around the world, from the streets of Latin America to the refugee camps of Europe and beyond. Throughout his papacy, Pope Francis demonstrated that faith in action has the power to transform the world. By championing the cause of social justice, he challenged Catholics and non-Catholics alike to put their beliefs into practice, to be the hands and feet of Christ in a world that so desperately needs healing. As he prepares to step down from his role as Pope, his legacy as a champion of the poor and the marginalized will continue to inspire and guide all those who seek to build a more just and loving world. Pope Francis's commitment to social justice was rooted in his deeply pastoral approach to leadership. His unwavering compassion for all people, especially those on the margins, defined his papacy and inspired a renewed sense of purpose within the Church. Pastoral approach and unwavering compassion. Pope Francis had a remarkable ability to connect with people on a personal level, to make them feel seen, heard, and valued. Whether he was washing the feet of prisoners or embracing a child with a disability, he embodied the love and compassion of Christ in a way that touched hearts around the world. His outreach to marginalized communities, from the slums of Buenos Aires to the refugee camps of Lesbos, demonstrated his belief that the Church must be a place of welcome and inclusion for all people, regardless of their circumstances. At the heart of Pope Francis's pastoral approach was his emphasis on mercy and forgiveness. He recognized that the Church had often failed to show compassion to those who were struggling or had made mistakes, and he sought to change that. He declared an extraordinary Jubilee Year of Mercy, encouraging Catholics to seek forgiveness and to extend mercy to others. He also worked tirelessly to heal the wounds of division and conflict, both within the Church and in the wider world. His historic meeting with the Russian Orthodox Patriarch and his efforts to promote reconciliation in countries like Colombia and South Sudan showed his deep commitment to building bridges of understanding and peace. Throughout his papacy, Pope Francis modeled a style of leadership that was rooted in humility and service. He eschewed the trappings of power and wealth, choosing to live in a simple apartment and drive a modest car. He emphasized the importance of listening and dialogue, seeking to build consensus rather than impose his will. His example inspired a new generation of church leaders to embrace a more collaborative and compassionate approach to ministry, one that put the needs of the people first, reforming the Church. Pope Francis also recognized that the Church itself was in need of deep reform. One of the most pressing challenges he faced was the clergy's sexual abuse crisis, which had eroded trust in the Church and caused immense suffering for survivors. Francis took important steps to address this crisis, holding bishops accountable and meeting with survivors to offer his apologies and support. He also worked to promote greater transparency and accountability within the Church, establishing new procedures for reporting abuse and disciplining those who were responsible. In addition to addressing the abuse crisis, Pope Francis undertook a series of structural reforms aimed at modernizing the Church and making it more responsive to the needs of the faithful. He restructured Vatican finances and administration, cracking down on corruption and increasing oversight. He appointed a diverse group of leaders from around the world, including many who shared his vision for a more inclusive and reform-minded Church. He also sought to decentralize power within the Church, giving local bishops and lay leaders more authority to make decisions that affected their communities. These reforms were not always popular with those who favored a more traditional, hierarchical model of the Church, but Francis remained committed to his vision of a Church that was more agile, transparent, and accountable to the people it served. Pope Francis's influence extended far beyond the Catholic Church, as he became a global leader in the pursuit of peace, justice, and environmental stewardship. His tireless efforts to build bridges of understanding and cooperation among people of all faiths and backgrounds inspired a new generation of activists and changemakers. Global influence and interfaith dialogue. Pope Francis understood that the challenges facing our world, from poverty and inequality to conflict and division, required a global response. He used his platform as Pope to engage with world leaders and international organizations, urging them to prioritize the needs of the poor and the marginalized. He also worked tirelessly to promote peace and understanding among people of different faiths, recognizing that dialogue and cooperation were essential to building a more just and harmonious world. His historic visits to countries like the United Arab Emirates and Iraq, where he met with Muslim leaders and signed joint declarations of fraternity, demonstrated his commitment to interfaith dialogue and reconciliation. Pope Francis's global influence was not limited to the realm of faith and spirituality. He also played a significant role in international diplomacy and conflict resolution. His efforts to broker peace in countries like Colombia and South Sudan, where he met with leaders and encouraged dialogue and reconciliation, showed the power of faith-based diplomacy. His example inspired a new generation of activists and changemakers who saw in him a model of compassionate leadership and a champion of the poor and the oppressed. Young people around the world were drawn to his message of social justice and inclusion, and many were inspired to take up the cause of building a more just and sustainable world. Environmental stewardship. One of Pope Francis's most significant contributions to the global dialogue on social justice was his powerful advocacy for environmental stewardship. In his groundbreaking encyclical, Laudato Si', he called on the world to confront the urgent challenge of climate change and to recognize the deep connections between ecological degradation and social inequality. He argued that the same forces that drive environmental destruction also contribute to poverty and marginalization, and that any effort to build a more just and sustainable world must address both challenges together. His message resonated with people of all faiths and backgrounds and helped to galvanize a global movement for climate justice. Pope Francis's commitment to environmental stewardship was not just a matter of words, but of action. He encouraged the Church to adopt sustainable practices and policies, from reducing energy consumption to investing in renewable energy. He collaborated with scientists and environmental groups to promote a deeper understanding of the challenges facing our planet and to develop concrete solutions. His example inspired a growing eco-friendly movement within the Church, as more and more Catholics recognize the moral imperative to care for our common home. As he prepares to step down from his role as Pope, his legacy as a champion of environmental justice and a leader in the global fight against climate change will continue to inspire and guide the Church and the world. As Pope Francis prepared to bid farewell to his flock, the world watched with a mix of anticipation and emotion. For many, it was a moment to reflect on the remarkable journey of a humble priest from Argentina who had become one of the most influential and beloved leaders of our time. The historic farewell. The atmosphere in St. Peter's Square was electric as tens of thousands of faithful gathered to hear Pope Francis' final words. In a voice heavy with emotion, he spoke of his love for the Church and his gratitude for the opportunity to serve as its leader. He recalled the many challenges and joys of his papacy and urged his followers to continue the work of building a more just and compassionate world. "Let us not be afraid to dream big, to embrace the future with hope," he said, his eyes glistening with tears. "Let us go forth, always forward, knowing that God is with us every step of the way." As the Pope's words echoed across the square, many in the crowd wept openly, overcome by the significance of the moment. For Catholics around the world, it was a time to reflect on the profound impact that Francis had made on the Church and on their own lives. From his emphasis on mercy and compassion to his tireless advocacy for the poor and the marginalized, he had challenged the faithful to live out the gospel in a way that was both authentic and transformative. In the days and weeks that followed, tributes poured in from around the globe as leaders and ordinary citizens alike praised Pope Francis for his humility, his courage, and his unwavering commitment to justice and peace. The farewell ceremony itself was filled with symbolic gestures that underscored the Pope's legacy. From the simple wooden cross that he carried to the altar to the hymns of joy and thanksgiving that filled the air, every detail seemed to capture the essence of his papacy. As he walked slowly down the steps of St. Peter's Basilica, supported by his aides, many saw in him a living embodiment of the suffering and the hope of the world. And as he stepped into the waiting helicopter, waving one last time to the crowds below, there was a sense that a chapter in the Church's history was coming to a close, but that the work of building a more just and loving world would continue. Unfinished business and future challenges. Of course, even as Pope Francis stepped down from his role, the Church faced a host of ongoing challenges and unfinished business. Chief among these was the need to continue the work of addressing the clergy's sexual abuse crisis, which had cast a shadow over the Church for decades. Francis had taken important steps to hold bishops accountable and to provide support for survivors, but much more remained to be done to ensure that the Church was a safe and welcoming place for all. At the same time, the fight against poverty and inequality remained a pressing concern, as did the need to navigate the tensions between traditionalists and progressives within the Church. As the Church looked to the future, there was also the question of who would take up the mantle of leadership after Pope Francis. Many hoped that his successor would be someone who shared his vision and his commitment to reform, and who could build on the momentum that he had created. But there were also concerns about the challenges of ensuring a smooth transition and sustaining the pace of change in an institution that was often resistant to new ideas. Ultimately, however, the legacy of Pope Francis would depend not only on the actions of his successor, but on the willingness of the faithful to take up the call to be agents of mercy, justice, and compassion in the world. As he had so often reminded them, the work of building the kingdom of God was the work of every believer, and it would require courage, perseverance, and a deep trust in the power of love to transform even the darkest of realities. As Pope Francis steps down from his role as the leader of the Catholic Church, his transformative papacy leaves behind a lasting impact on the Church and the world. His humble leadership style, unwavering commitment to social justice, and emphasis on compassion and inclusion have challenged us all to be more authentic in our faith and more committed to building a world of justice and peace. As we look to the future, let us embrace the lessons of Pope Francis's papacy and continue his work of reaching out to the marginalized, caring for our common home, and building bridges of understanding and cooperation. If you are also inspired with the story and commitment of creating peace of Pope Francis, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for what's next, and always stay questioning.